Few people realize that some of the most important innovations in World War II weren't tanks, planes, or even radar. They were fabrics. Not glamorous, not celebrated, often invisible to the public, yet quietly decisive. Soldiers in freezing, wet and grueling conditions owed their survival to a textile that changed the battlefield. Imagine being behind enemy lines in a rainstorm, soaked to the bone, your uniform weighing you down, hypothermia waiting just around the corner. Now imagine that the clothing you wear is lighter than anything before, completely waterproof and stronger than canvas. That fabric existed, and it wasn't silk, cotton or wool. It was something entirely different. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe to Iron Age Instincts so you never miss the hidden survival lessons history left behind. The story of this fabric, really challenges our assumptions about wartime engineering. Most people picture World War II as a clash of machines and manpower, but for the individual soldier, survival often depended on something far smaller, far subtler. This is, actually, the story of how an unassuming material saved lives, boosted mobility, and quietly revolutionized military logistics. In the early years of World War II, armies around the world relied on traditional materials for their uniforms. Wool, cotton and canvas had been standard for decades, but in the extreme environments of the European winter or the jungles of the Pacific, they were, frankly, fatal liabilities. Wool absorbs water like a sponge and becomes unbearably heavy when wet. Cotton, while breathable, offered almost no insulation once soaked. Canvas tents, tarps and packs deteriorated quickly in rain and mud. Reports from the Eastern Front and the Italian campaign describe soldiers literally collapsing under the weight of saturated uniforms. Hypothermia and trench foot were constant killers, sometimes more dangerous than bullets. In the Pacific, monsoon rains rendered cotton uniforms and canvas packs useless. The lesson was clear. If you didn't keep soldiers dry, you didn't keep them alive. The Allied forces knew they needed a solution, and the challenge was monumental. This fabric didn't actually originate in a military lab, but rather in industrial research centres that were focused on chemistry and textiles. So the breakthrough really came from experimenting with synthetic polymers, especially nylon, and those early versions of polyurethane coatings. Chemists at the time had been searching for a material that could combine three key properties: waterproofing, strength, and, lightness. The result, honestly, was nothing short of revolutionary. A tightly woven synthetic textile could be coated with a waterproof layer, all while staying flexible. Unlike cotton or wool, it would just shed water completely. And you see, unlike canvas, it would resist tears and abrasions, even under the stress of combat. Plus, unlike silk, which had only been used sparingly for parachutes, this new material could be mass-produced in industrial quantities. For the infantrymen, the difference was immediate. Soldiers could march for hours in rain, mud, or snow without soaking through. Packs, tents, and even protective gear now stayed dry, reducing the risk of illness and exhaustion. Hypothermia rates dropped, trench foot became less common, and morale improved simply because soldiers weren't constantly wet and miserable. The fabric also changed the logistics of supply. Units could now carry lighter, more compact equipment. Waterproof clothing meant fewer blankets and tarps were necessary. Soldiers could sleep in the open or under improvised shelters without fear. For special operations, troops, paratroopers, commandos, and reconnaissance units, the ability to move quickly while staying dry was a tactical advantage that often meant the difference between life and death. Commanders quickly realized that this material didn't just improve comfort, it enhanced combat effectiveness. Lighter waterproof uniforms meant, well, faster movement. Waterproof packs kept weapons, ammunition, and communications gear functioning in wet conditions. Soldiers who could endure prolonged exposure to cold rain or snow could hold positions longer and execute flanking maneuvers that would have been impossible before. Consider the Italian Alps campaign or the Ardennes. Soldiers outfitted with the new fabric could maneuver across rivers and frozen terrain without losing mobility. Units not equipped with it struggled and suffered heavy casualties. The fabric quietly reshaped engagements, even if generals didn't boast about it in after-action reports. Survival, mobility, and endurance, often underestimated in historical narratives, were now supported by the science of textiles. World War II wasn't just a battle of armies, it was a battle of resources. Cotton and wool were scarce, and traditional supply chains were stretched thin. Developing a synthetic alternative was as much a matter of necessity as innovation. Factories that once produced civilian fabrics pivoted to military contracts, and chemists worked tirelessly to scale production. The result was a remarkable industrial achievement. Entire mills were retooled to weave the synthetic fibres, and coating processes were refined to withstand prolonged combat use. Quality control became essential. Small flaws in the coating could lead to catastrophic water penetration in the field. The combination of chemical innovation and industrial scale made it possible for millions of soldiers to benefit from the material. The story of this fabric is not just historical curiosity. It offers lessons for anyone interested in survival. First, small innovations can save lives. In extreme conditions, a few ounces of waterproof material can mean the difference between endurance and collapse. Second, mobility and protection are inseparable. Carrying heavier materials that fail under stress is worse than carrying nothing. Third, the integration of science and practical experience matters. Chemists created the material, but soldiers in the field validated it. For modern preppers or survival enthusiasts, understanding how this fabric addressed real-world problems can guide contemporary choices. Synthetic materials like Gore-Tex, ripstop nylon, and modern waterproof membranes trace their lineage back to these World War II breakthroughs. The principle is timeless. Survival is often a product of understanding materials, conditions, and human limits, and applying innovation where it counts most. After World War II, the impact of this fabric did not vanish with the guns. Militaries around the world, adopted similar synthetics. Outdoor recreation, mountaineering, and eventually modern tactical gear all borrowed from this material science breakthrough. Parachutes, tents, sleeping bags, and jackets all benefited from lessons learned in the field. Historians often focus on battles and strategy, but the survival of the individual soldier, a combination of science, resourcefulness, and industrial innovation, was equally decisive. Without this unheralded fabric, casualty rates would have been higher, operations slower, and, soldiers' endurance markedly reduced. Its story reminds us that sometimes the smallest innovations can tip the balance in war and in survival. In the end, the true hero of many World War II campaigns wasn't a general, a tank, or a plane. It was a textile, engineered to withstand the elements, light enough to carry and strong enough to endure. It saved lives, improved mobility, and quietly shaped the outcomes of battles where conventional weapons might have been expected to dominate. For those of us who study history, survival, or the intersection of both, this fabric is a reminder to look closer. Look beyond the obvious. Notice the tools and technologies that made endurance possible. Understand that survival in war, and in life, is often decided not by who fires the first shot, but by who stays dry, warm, and mobile when the rest of the world seems intent on drowning them. If you found this exploration fascinating, remember to subscribe to Iron Age Instincts for more hidden histories and survival lessons the textbooks don't always tell you.